Good morning, everybody. As usual, we'll give it a minute or two for everybody to get logged on and situated. Welcome to the fourth installment of the SSIS Mentor Coffee Talk series. And again, we'll give it about 30 more seconds before we get into our presentation today. Looks like we're still slowly climbing in the participant roster. All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the SSIS Mentor Coffee Talk on permanency. Today, we are on the cusp of November, and November is National Adoption Month. So what better way to rein that in by having members of our Permanency Quality Assurance team here to provide us a presentation on permanency in SSIS. We have with us today Vanessa Ryan, we have Catrina Ankarlo, and we also have Elisha Wolfman. You all should know me by now. My name is Kratt, and I'm the lead SSIS trainer here with the Division of Child Safety and Permanency, and also the Minnesota Child Welfare Training Academy. And as always, we like to start out by introducing our panelists. So I'm going to hand the baton over to Vanessa and have her introduce herself, and then she can pass the baton from there.
Great, thanks, Eric. As you mentioned, I am Vanessa Ryan. I'm a member of the Permanency Quality Assurance team. And our role is really to provide technical assistance to counties and tribes throughout the state with regards to SSIS and just different pieces within their work as it pertains to permanency for adoptions or transfers of permanent legal custody. So today we're going to be focusing on the SSIS side when it comes to adoptions and walking through that. Catrina or Elisha?
Yeah, I'm Catrina Ankarlo, and we all three are doing the same position. So Vanessa gave us a nice intro there. Thank you. We've all come to the role from kind of a different angles and different backgrounds, but I think that we make a really good team with our history and what we bring to the table. So we're really excited to be here. So glad that we could be here today to help talk about permanency and SSIS. So Elisha, are you there?
Good morning, I'm Elisha. Also excited to be here. Oh, are you done? My audio is having fun this morning, so I think I just cut Catrina off, but I'm Elisha, I'm the third member. I wanted to make an entrance apparently. So yeah, we're just excited to be here to talk about SSIS and permanency.
All right, so today we're just going to go through post-adoptive and pre-adoptive identities and what those two mean, what the differences are. We'll review continuous placements and just how those are completed in SSIS, as well as reviewing some scenarios that we hope will address just sort of maybe questions people have about how or where information should be added in those identities. We'll look at some data fixes and workarounds and share some resources. And we'll have time for questions. Feel free to type them in as we're going along. We're pretty informal and flexible, so we can take questions throughout. Otherwise, I know we have some time built in at the end as well to answer those questions. And then we will share our contact information as well as your consultant's information as well. We do refer to them throughout the presentation. They can be really helpful resources too. So pre and post adoptive identities. So what pre and post adoptive identities mean are those identities for kids prior to adoption and then after adoption. So when you're entering information for a child prior to adoption, that goes into their pre-adoptive identity. And so that may start back when they have a child protection case open and they have that pre-identity. And then all information as it pertains to the adoption process are entered in there. And then once the child is adopted, they then have that post-adoptive identity, where information, anything that happens regarding the child after adoption is entered into that post-adoptive identity case, and it should go in there. It's really important that when you're entering information to select the correct identity, as there will be some barriers that you'll come across as you're trying to enter that information if you select the incorrect identity. With regards to MAPC reassessment requests, it's really important that those go in the post-adoption identity as it's going to relate to that child post-adoption, and we need that to track correctly, that it's with that child's adoptive identity. And we understand that there is a temptation to merge those pre and post-adoptive identities. However, it's important that they remain separate. They should not be merged as they are two separate cases for that child. We understand that's confusing too because it's the same child, but it is a different identity, and it's important to keep that information separate for the sake of just different data privacy, things like that. And we have some scenarios coming up that we'll talk about to kind of explain more of why we do that and how the information is entered. So there is an SSIS rule that will prevent a second continuous placement being created for a child under the pre-adoptive client if they've been adopted. So a new continuous placement cannot be created for that child under their pre-adoptive identity once they've been adopted. If a new continuous placement is created, it will have to go under their post-adoptive identity. And it's really important too that the continuous placement is correct, is because that's where those post-adoption services are going to be recorded, is under their new adoptive identity. Even if they were receiving those services prior to adoption and had record in their pre-adoptive identity, if those services are carrying over, they now continue on in their post-adoptive identity as well. So I'll review some scenarios. You're muted, Elisha.
Can you hear me now? That's weird. Okay. Different scenarios that we just wanted to run through. I did kind of want to just take a pause, you know, when we're talking about pre and post identities, if there were any questions. I think it's our understanding this is coffee talk, so we, you know, want to hear from you all. So if you do have questions, you know, please ask us. So our first scenario that we wanted to talk about is you have a child who is adopted that ends up back with a biological parent. Maybe they're there visiting. Our examples where they either ran away or spending the day with a bio parent. And while with that biological parent, something happens and it ends up being reported to child protection. In this scenario, question is, what would we use? Would we use the pre-adoptive name or the post-adoptive name? For this situation, you would use the post-adopt identity because it happened after the adoption. I think you'll kind of really hear that highlighted between the difference of the post-adoptive identity is always used after the adoption, before. And just because it is the child was with a birth parent, it doesn't mean that the post-adopt identity doesn't apply. So you're really just kind of looking at whether or not that child was adopted or not, and it doesn't correlate back to, you know, who the offender was or back to the birth parent.
In scenario 2, we're going to have a similar situation where the child's already been adopted, but you're getting a new report in regarding something that have happened prior to their adoption. So, you know, you might be tempted to look at, well, this could be confusing. Where should I put this? Because the incident actually happened prior to their adoption. And your alleged offender is the biological parent. So, you know, maybe the child reported something to the new family, and now you're wondering what to do with it. So the question here is, what name do we use? Do we use the pre-adoptive or the post-adoptive, knowing that it happened prior to adoption? But if you, so as we look at it, we want to make sure that we're still listing it under their post-adoption identity, because that's when it came out, the information came to you, it was afterwards. And you're going to be working with that family, the current family, and that's where the services are likely, that's where the services are going to be. This is actually something that's happening in real time, even though it was a past event. So keeping that in mind, that we want to make sure and keep that in the post-adoption identity. But I know that it's tempting to think that it should go in the pre-adoptive. So when we look at some of these scenarios and when we're talking about the pre and post information about identities, I wanted to kind of just talk about the reasons why, the things we're looking out for. So the concerns that are, you know, that we're trying to prevent is any relationship getting entered between the old bio parents and the post-adopt ID. So making sure that even if you have to enter an alleged offender in, even if they're a biological parent, post-adopt, you would not establish a relationship in SSIS for that person. That person does not technically have a relationship with that child. So remembering to keep that severed in your SSIS work, in your post-adopt ID. And then making sure that we're not flipping names back and forth. Post-adopt identity stays in post-adopt, pre-identity stays in pre-identity, and that names are entered in as alternatives in either case. It's really important. And then just being careful about adoption details. They're confidential. We need to maintain that. And so adoption details, just paying attention to where you're putting them and are they necessary, and then how are you going to protect them? And we'll talk about that in just a minute. And then, of course, we always want to prevent or to make as few data fixes as we can. So managing that, if we can maintain to not link these pre-post identities, that means less data fixes. And, that means a better data management so that we're keeping where it should be in which identity. And it prevents lots and lots of stress and frustration with SSIS. In regards to data privacy, I just want to point out that, adoption information is confidential, and it adds an extra layer of data privacy that's needed when you're dealing with any information regarding that. So if you have adoption details, let's say in your post-adoption work group, because of any of this information, you're going to, let's say if someone requested records or anything, that's an extra layer of making sure that certain information is redacted, because you'll be caretaking that data at that extra level of confidential. So that's another reason we want to be really careful about what we're putting in, where it's at, and how do we maintain it.
And Catrina, it looks like we have a question about the post-adopt ID. So the question is, so when is the post-adopt ID done? So essentially we are adding a new person after the adoption is finalized. What if their name never changed as it was a relative adoption and they chose not to change the name?
Yeah, so regardless of the name change, they're still going to get a new identity at adoption, and that's created at DHS. That when we finalize adoptions, that's when that's created. That draw the line in the sand, basically. And so your post-adoption identity, it's regardless of name change, and so you'll still need to maintain two different. I mean, you will have the establishment of the new identity, and that's when everything, services, everything going forward will go under post-adoption identity. They'll get new medical numbers. It's like starting over. So keeping that in mind, it really doesn't. It's not hinged on a name change.
Thanks, Catrina. Yeah, and Cindy put some more information in the chat as far as it really does issue new SSIS, person numbers, a new county person, the new PMI, a new Swindex. So yeah, like Catrina said, even if there is no name change, there still is a new identity created in SSIS. Looks like we have another question. We have a case like scenario 1. The child is now with biomom. Do we list her as biological mom under relationship, or does that link the pre-adoptive name with the post-adoptive name? I believe it's my understanding that if they're listed under the relationship tab, it will not link the pre-adoptive name and the post-adoptive name. So you could list her as, well, let me think about that. Catrina, if they terminated parental rights, would it be, is there a previous parent? Adding a relationship wouldn't link their adoptive and post-adoptive name, but I'm trying to think of what the options would be in SSIS that you would want to select for biomom.
I'd add, Elisha, that maybe she could clarify of what is the legal relationship. So she says that child is now with biomom. Does that mean that she's just living with biomom, or is she, who has legal custody of the child, right? Because how is that working legally so that I think that because you could reestablish parental rights, there's other things going on here. So I'm not quite sure what is now with biomom means. Does that mean she's living permanently there and you're trying to do services? The questions are coming in fast and furious.
I know, well, it's good. It's nice to see questions. And, I think just highlighting on an overarching, there are going to be a lot of unique situations. The scenarios, we can only cover so much. And like Catrina said, there are certain details that it's hard to answer, some general. And so we have contact information at the end too. So if we can't answer specific, so if you have a specific case, Janice, please reach out to us and we can get more details and answer. Oh, and it looks like if you could ask questions in the Q&A, that would be awesome. I think. Should we answer them, Catrina? Go through. Okay, so what if they keep saying a security number? So you cannot remove the social security number from pre-adoptive identity as locked into identity with DHS. So if they keep the same social security number, it would, so I think, okay, so you might have the same social security, but they're still going to get different post-adoptive, like a post-identity information. So their Swindex and other numbers are still going to change. And so the social security number alone is not going to link the two pre and post-adoptive identities. A lot of this, when we're talking about the importance of selecting the appropriate pre or post-adoptive identity into your work groups, there may, you know, you really have to kind of look at all of the identifying information when you're selecting them, because there may be the same social security number. So if you're just looking at the social security number, you know, I would encourage you to look at the Swindex and the PMI to make sure that you are selecting the right person. Do you create a new person? Or yep.
Oh, I was just gonna move on to the next question about creating a new person in an open work group, the post-adoption, and the answer is no. You should close services as pre-identity and open services as post-identity, so that so there is a clear line about the between the two identities. So it just they're not residing in the same work group. Okay. What do you think here? Looks like Janice added a little bit more information. Well, if he was placed with BioMom as a foster care placement, then she would be a foster parent, and now he's in a facility. So I'm not sure where you're. I mean, he's going to be a relative, I guess, a relative foster placement is how you would put her, or as a foster parent. But she's not a parent, or you know, she doesn't have any legal. I'm assuming she doesn't have any legal. We didn't talk about a CPR. Oh yeah, she's post adoption. I'm sorry. So yeah, if she was a foster care placement, then that's as far as I would go at that point. And he's now in a facility. And if you want any more specifics, like us to look into a case, let us know.
Yeah, the moral of that one is you're still choosing that child's post-adoptive identity and using that identity throughout your work group while he continues his placement, or his new continuous placement post-adoption.
Do you guys want me to read questions from the Q&A, or do you guys have that under control? Sorry, this is Eric.
Maybe if you want to read them, because I've lost track between the chat and the Q&A box.
Okay. So I'm going to read the final question that I see in the chat, and then if everybody could please refer your questions to the Q&A, that way we can know when we've answered them. It's a little easier to track. So the final question from the chat section is, can you explain more about the top item on slide 6? Where should a pre-adoptive placement be entered? Slide 6 says SSIS rule to prevent county workers from creating a second continuous placement for the child under the pre-adoptive client. If we entered this under placements, who can help us undo or fix this? That's a long question.
Yeah. Can you...
Who wants to take that one?
I can take it.
So
it's enough.
Okay, whatever you want to do.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that, so on slide 6, it's referring to the SSIS, that top line. There's a rule in SSIS that won't allow a county worker to add a continuous placement in a child that's already adopted in that pre-adoptive identity. So that's where the rule comes in. It will actually prevent it. So the question is, where should a pre-adoptive placement be entered? So if you have a pre-adoptive placement, it's entered in the pre-adoptive identity. If a child's already been adopted, and unfortunately it happens sometimes that adoption is disrupted, and you have to find a new placement. And if you find a new pre-adoptive placement for a child who's already been adopted, then that would go in the post-adoptive identity, right? Because that's the new one you created. So wherever you need to create a pre-adoptive placement, you can only do it in the identity the child is currently have. Does that make sense? And if you have specific questions, if you're having trouble like entering in something, you can always reach out to us and we'll give you contact information.
Yeah, that rule was put in place because people were struggling with selecting the right pre or post-adoptive identity. So SSIS, as a way to try and help workers not create a new continuous placement once a child has been adopted in their pre-adoptive identity, they created that rule to kind of give you an error as a reminder to say, hey, create this new continuous placement under the child's post-adoptive, like their new adoptive identity. Kind of the nice thing about SSIS is it is a system that, you know, it will walk you through things. And although sometimes those error messages are or can be frustrating, it is trying to prompt you, you know, to kind of take a double check of, you know, what you're entering and where you're entering it.
Okay, our next question comes from Paige. So when is the post-adopt ID done? So essentially, we are adding a new person after the adoption is finalized. What if their name never changed as it was a relative adoption and they chose not to change the name?
The post-adopt ID gets done once we finalize the adoption in SSIS. So it automatically gets created, and even if their name never changed, again, there's still going to be identifying information that does change as part of that post-adoptive identity.
And Jesse Schultz asks, if the child has an open caddy waiver service while the adoption is being finalized, do we need to close the caddy case and start a new one with the new post-adopt identity? Or can we just add the new post-adoption identity to the current case?
I'm not an expert on caddy, so let me start there. But as far as services should end with the pre-identity and start with post-identity. So there should be a break in, because you might run into issues with their PMI number or other issues causing payment and whatnot, because they will get all new numbers even if their name doesn't change at that adoption. So and we've ran into that before where cases were not closed and they continued services, which, you know, makes sense, right? Because you would think that the services continue, so we'll just keep it open. But then they've run into a lot of problems with billing and getting services done, because it will stop at that adoption time. They'll shut down their PMI number and issue a new one, and then and they're not linked where they automatically go to the new number. You have to start billing under a new number. Is there anything you want to add, Elisha, to that?
I want to add something. This is Cynthia.
Oh.
So that's exactly the advice that we have provided before, and we want to be consistent. Pre and post, the individuals are different. They have different identities. They should be treated as different people. So if they're in a children's mental health work group or a developmental disabilities work group, or regardless of what kind of service they're getting, essentially that person is post-adoption is a new person and should be a new work groups. I know it is some work to do that. And I know there's reasons like for service provision why we don't like to do that, but the adoption supersedes, and we need to make sure that those individuals are have new work groups with their new identity, where they're not linked to their old identity. And as you mentioned as well, there are fiscal issues that can become a problem. And we all know there's huge issues with PMI right now. So, so yes, those should be, all of those kids and whatever services they're getting should be opened as new work groups.
And just to add to, in addition to the fiscal, like Catrina highlighted with data privacy, you know, before parents' rights are terminated, they would have different rights to certain information in that CADI work group, which they would not have post-adoption. And so, you know, there's some of that information sharing and the data privacy that we definitely want to make sure that they are two separate identity, you know, two separate work groups, because there is different access to information pre and post adoption for biological parents.
Okay, are we ready to move on? All right, the next question is, do you create a new person in SSIS post-adoption in the open work group?
I think that earlier we had talked about that you definitely want that break in services too. So I would not create a person in an open work group. I would close the work group, make sure that you have everything lined out in your new identity, and then reopen the work group so that there is a clear line between services of pre-identity and post-identity.
And then I think another attendee had added on to the social security number issue. And they state, when the child is adopted and keeps the same SSN, I have deleted the social security number in the pre and re-cleared the client. This helps to keep them separate. So that's just adding on to information that you've provided earlier. And then we have a question from Terry. I have a biological parent error that comes up in data integrity reports. Error that is a parent of an adopted child, but this parent has changed their sexual preference and name, and Maxis now merged to Swindex and wants SSIS to change our system. But we do not want to change it in our system, as if child ever comes back to find parent, we will not find the parent, as the name will be different and also the sex or the gender will be different. How can we get this data integrity error to go away? And then I think Cynthia was trying to respond to this question. Cynthia, did you want to answer
Sure.
that?
So I'll just say briefly, and Terry, I'm happy to talk to you both this more. I'll say two things. One, the gender category as it currently is folks should consider that to be the sex assigned at birth of a person, not their gender identity expression. And so if folks are in this situation, you know, one of the parents is changing their, you know, their gender, that, you know, really for the system, the sex assigned at birth, which is currently called the gender, should not be changed in Maxis and SSIS. It's a key identifier of individuals. As folks, many of you have had questions come up here now and again about this, and we are working on, you know, enhancements so that we do have a gender category that is actually reflective of gender identity and not sex assigned at birth. So there's that piece. The other piece is, yep, there may be some things on these data integrity reports that you're not able to completely clear off. And one, that's okay. And two, I'm happy to talk with you about any of those specifics, about any of those that you might have.
Okay, great. And then the final question, is DHS looking at a warning from entering a new work group on the pre-adoptive ID after the adoption is finalized? And then continues on to say, sorry, guess a warning needed from entering the intake work group on a pre-adoptive ID as well?
I would say, Dawn, send that in, you know, any of your thoughts or things like that that would be helpful. Send those in as an enhancement request to the help desk.
Thanks, Cynthia. Our next few slides, hopefully you got a copy of the PowerPoint and then a couple of resources, one of which was a workaround and data fix resource. So the next few slides you will find in that resource. The changes to family structure are right in the beginning, so it's your first like 3 pages of that resource guide. We wanted to put this in here because there are a lot of situations that happen, and with the child ward folder, there is limited ability to make changes without requesting data fixes. So we wanted to provide resources to assist with the process as the child moves through adoption. I think it's also just important to highlight the data request or the data fix request kind of process. So when you send in your data fix request to the SSIS help desk and you get a response that says sending it on to policy for approval or they're waiting to hear back, SSIS help desk is sending it on to Vanessa, Catrina, and myself. So we are the ones that kind of review some of the requests that come in regards to permanency, and which is also why sometimes it takes a few days to get back because it is kind of a 2-stage process. So the next few slides, it changes the family structure. I'm not gonna read all of them, but we have kind of 3 different common scenarios that we run into. Maybe they're adding a parent or removing, and there are 2 different slides for potential scenarios that you might have. You might be removing a pre-adoptive parent, both from the pre-adoptive placement and removing them as a foster parent, or maybe they're still remaining as a foster parent, but they're not choosing to adopt. So there are lots of different scenarios within this. A big one is with the BizOrg. There's a lot of coordination between the BizOrg and the child ward folder as far as kind of that billing and payment goes with the foster care payments, and then it carries on post-adoption. So we just wanted to break down the steps. The other overarching thing, depending on your role in entering or requesting the data fixes, is you're also collaborating with your records and eligibility worker as far as if there's additional paperwork or letting them know, hey, we're having this issue, so everybody can be on the same page. Again, if you are running into any issues or questions, please feel free to reach out and contact us, but we wanted to put these slides in here as a step-by-step to try and help you walk through the process. I think the other thing is there is some pre-work. Just some pre-work, before you're requesting data fixes. So just make sure that you've changed what you can or make the changes on your end before requesting the data fix, because there is some pre-work that you can do before a data fix. And sometimes if that's not done, you'll get that response back like, hey, can you please, check mark this or make the changes where you can, and then the data fix can be either completed or made at that time.
Thanks, Elisha. Lots of good pointers there as you're, being probably frustrated and trying to figure out how am I going to fix this? Because we all know that, when you work with people that things happen and it doesn't always match up well with our computer system. And I think that can be frustrating. It makes sense to us, but how do we get our SSIS to cooperate with our human lives? So like Elisha said, these are some slides just to kind of help you walk through some of these things that happen, like we do see like when an APA disrupts, but the family is willing to support the child until a new adopted placement is found. And so you don't have to move the child right away. They're willing to go through the process and help the child move on. So you need to disrupt the adoption placement agreement so that your records are accurate. DHS knows that you're not under an APA, but the child's not actually leaving the home. So these things happen, and so this is some steps to help you through that process, because you can update this without so that everyone's records are correct. So just keeping that in mind. I think this is one of the ones we see, one of the issues that we see quite often that you can work through. And then also we'll see that sometimes you'll do an adoptive placement agreement, you want to move forward, but the child is not in the home. Sometimes they're in residential treatment, or other situations where it's not making, the two don't quite line up correctly, and it is possible to go ahead and do that adoptive placement agreement and to do the verification while the child is residing outside the home. The adoptive placement agreement is also about intent as well, so that family's making a commitment to that child. You don't have to wait for that child to move into the home before doing that work. So just keeping that in mind, there is a way to do it. It is a little bit more work in SSIS, but it's possible. So if this happens, you have a little bit of a guide here to help you walk through it. If you need assistance, make sure and just feel free to reach out to us, and we will love to help. That's what we do. That's our job. So, feel free to reach out to us.
There's a question in the chat, in the Q&A. It says, scenario, child's adoption was finalized on June 29th, 2020. New PMI was active on August 12th of 2020. When do we close the existing children's mental health work group and start the new one?
Well, if we're talking about a billing issue, that the child's PMI and all of that, all of the medical will go back and cover that time. So I'm going to look at this from a permanency standpoint. The permanency standpoint is you would close it on the date of the pre-identity and open the post-identity on the date of the adoption. So however you're going to close that, you're going to close it. It should coincide with your adoption date. And then the rest of your billing issue and your PMI issuing, I'm not sure how long it takes, and maybe Cynthia could help out with that if she has more to add. But from our standpoint, your cases should close in relation to the adoption date.
Thanks. That's all the questions for now. Thank you.
Okay. I wasn't sure if Cynthia wanted to weigh in on that one. And then another thing that you'll need to keep in mind for adoptive placement agreements is that if you do have a disruption, you'll need to notify through SSIS that placement disrupted, and we've included that instruction. It does happen when placements don't work out, and how do we update SSIS to make sure it accurately reflects what's going on with the child and the placement. So we need to know that at DHS, as well as your record at the county needs to reflect that. So we also included that on our slides for your guidance.
All right. In the email that you received prior to the presentation, we did share a couple of resources that we just wanted to highlight. One is the adoption workflow. This is a helpful guide as you're setting up that child ward folder and just completing other items within their pre-adoptive identity. It does include some helpful hints and just how to complete the work in SSIS. And we also, we referenced it throughout, but just that data fix and workaround worksheet, it just provides a lot of the information that we included on the slides is also in there with some additional details on how to do those workarounds before you have to contact the help desk or anything like that. And as we mentioned, be sure to loop in your consultant and just let them know, hey, this we've had this happen in the case, and so I'm working on this in SSIS. And that way they're aware as well to look out for those changes too. Any additional questions that have come in, Eric?
Nope, I don't see any.
Okay. So here's our contact information. As you mentioned, we're happy to help with any more specific questions you have regarding SSIS. The northstar.benefits@state.mn.us is our general email inbox. We have someone monitoring it every day, so we can follow up with you that day regarding any questions you have regarding anything with your cases for permanency. We included our agency policy specialist, Heide Gallet. We usually will refer to her if we have any questions related specifically to policy. And then we included our supervisors, Kathleen Heinecker and Michael Peterson. They do a lot of work as well with overseeing SSIS and different aspects of it. And so we wanted to include their information as well. And then we also included the records and eligibility consultants. You can reach out to us if you're unsure of who your consultant is, and we can direct you. Otherwise, their contact information is included here. And then we also have our direct emails included on this slide as well. And thank you for attending.
Yeah, if we were in person, I usually do like a little jig at the end, but you can't. You can't see.
That is true. That's true. Elisha always does a little dance at the end of our training. So
yeah,
everybody survives. But yeah, I think, you know, like, hopefully you heard throughout, please reach out to us. We know that we operate in the gray a lot. So if you have questions on if you should be choosing the pre or post adoptive identity or issues, you know, opening or closing, let us know. The help desk is still your resource for the data fix request. So you're sending it directly there, and then we work with the help desk pretty collaboratively in trying to answer the questions that come in. And, you know, thanks for doing all the work there. We know, you know, I was a SSIS mentor back in the day for Sherburne County or Rock County. And so I know, you know, I've been in your shoes. It's hard to assist, you know, and help other workers out in areas that you may not be familiar with. So there are resources, you know, Catrina, Vanessa, and I would love to answer questions and help. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Well, thank you so much, Elisha, Catrina, and Vanessa. Lots of really good information to share with our mentors. And I believe that there are some supervisors on the call or in the webinar today. So all very beneficial. Heidi, I don't know if you had any concluding remarks today regarding some of the previously recorded webinars, or if you have any future announcements.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to share. Good morning, everybody. This is Heidi. Just wanted to let you know that Eric and I have reviewed the MAPC Coffee Talk sessions, and we will be sending links out to everybody so you can access those probably by the end of the week. Along with those MAPC sessions, we will also include today's recording. And I just wanted to reiterate what Eric said and thank Vanessa, Catrina, and Elisha for helping us out today. It was wonderful having the three of them. And I'd also like to thank Eric again for his awesome facilitation. But anyway, we just appreciate all of you so much. So thank you all again. And I hope everybody has a wonderful day.
And our next coffee talk will be at the end of November. And we will be talking about adult protection and SSIS, all kinds of different nuggets of information with that as well. So
yes, and we will also be including release information for version 20.4.
correct. All right, thanks everybody. Have a great rest of your day, and we will see you next time.